What's up, guys? Welcome into the Power G show on a Wednesday night. My
Hey.
name is Graham Coffee. That's the big G, the powerful G, Mr. George Foster. What's happening?
Yes. None, man. Is the days are going slow. Ready for this big matchup Saturday, man. The game going slow. I'm feeling a little nostalgic. I'm putting my ring on. You know,
Oh,
you know.
yeah. You
SEC
went over there in
championship.
02.
Last,
Man
yeah,
enough
yeah.
game, right?
The man enough game. I went over there. You know, beat up on Bama a little bit. One of the few times we beat them in the last. I don't know how many times. Yeah, I'm ready. We got a helmet. We ready to go. Go Dogs.
What do I got to do to get you? Does that thing still fit?
This is not my helmet. My helmet is on the shelf. Does that one still fit? That's a good question because those things were. It's a different type of helmet back then, Jack. This is a replica, though. But I'm ready to go, man. Go Dogs. Go Dogs.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, no, you were there in 02. The only time I've ever been to Tuscaloosa was in 07 when I was a freshman at Georgia. I went over there for that game, and that was the Stafford to Henderson one and done. And man, that was the last time they won there. And you'll hear that stat a lot probably this week, but they've only played there once since then. They've only played there once, and that was in 2020 during the COVID season. So Georgia and Alabama have been playing a lot in the postseason, but they don't play all that often in the regular season. This is a big matchup. It's been hyped up, and it feels like with the bye week, we've gotten a whole extra layer of anticipation built onto this because Georgia fans saw the Kentucky game, and I don't think they felt great about it. How'd you feel about it?
How do I feel about the Kentucky game? Left a lot to be desired. Definitely points wise. On offense, left a lot to be desired offensively. Defensively, another game without giving up a touchdown. That's always great. I don't worry about that side of the ball ever. I really don't worry about Georgia at all because they haven't given me any reasons to worry. Other than we've had a couple of postseason losses. In the last 4 years or whatever. So, I don't worry about the team much. But last week, there were components of the game that had me irked a little bit. There's some missing blocks and things of that nature, stuff that uncharacteristic of us. So you kind of hope that they've had 2 weeks to shore that stuff up, and I'm pretty sure they did.
Yeah, I think I expected the Kentucky game plan to be pretty vanilla, and I think it was pretty vanilla. The only time they really did anything that wasn't just like basic concepts that we know are foundational to the offense was the touchdown drive in the third quarter. You saw them, they ran the little goal line run play with Arian in the backfield and kind of that fake jet sweep motion, which I thought was nice. There was a play they came out in with a little stacked receiver set over the slot, and I think the quarter ended, so they never ran a play out of it. But like, you finally saw them do a little stuff. I mean, one thing I've been tracking with them pretty closely is that against Clemson, they had some sort of pre-snap motion on, I believe, 40.5% of plays, which is a ton. It was twice as much pre-snap motion than anybody else in the SEC ran in week 1. Week 2, they ran about half that, like 20% pre-snap motion. And then at Kentucky, it was like 17%, which was pretty low for Georgia, in the last 3 to 4 years. And so that's kind of another indicator to me that the game plan was vanilla. But to your point, that's fine if you want to run things vanilla and kind of keep things close to your vest before a bye week and before Alabama. The problem is that they weren't executing vanilla. Like a missed block is a missed block. I don't care if it's a missed block on a double fake reverse pass or a missed block on inside zone. It's still a missed block, and I think that is the concern, really. And I'd be interested to get your perspective on it as a former, not just former offensive lineman, but a former tackle, because I felt like that game was probably some of the worst tackle play we've seen from Georgia in years.
Yeah, they definitely could have done better. Man, that's the thing about football, man. It's everybody. It's a series of one-on-ones done in unison. And when one person doesn't do their job, it can mess up the whole play. You know what I mean? It could be devastating, depending on the play, depending on who messes up. So yeah, they have to get those. They have to be more in sync in this game. There were times last game where they were out of sync, and that goes for everybody. I believe there are people. I believe everybody on offense last game had a play where they just didn't do what they were supposed to do, and those add up. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
if you mess up, but it can be your only mistake. But then the next play, somebody else's messes up. They fix their stuff, but the next play, somebody else screws up. Then the next play, somebody else screws. Like it's all like you don't have good plays in succession. So you have to. Everybody has to do the small things and do their assignment. At a high rate, and that's how you get success. And they just didn't do that.
So I guess my question for you, they had that game and they had those mistakes like we're talking about, but in the end, they won. And I think that's a theme. That's an old kind of college football theme that old school college football internet has talked about for a long time. Is like win your clunkers, right? Like when you don't have your fastball, can you win? And they did that. What can that do for them confidence wise going forward?
Now it's funny you say that. Everybody loves a blowout. I know I do. I don't. Some people get bored. I don't care. Kill them. You know what I mean? 100-0. I'm going to enjoy every touchdown.
Yeah.
So I like that, but at the same time, even with me, I never envisioned them losing that game last week. Yeah, you want things to be better, but I knew what was going on, and I knew they'd win that game. I thought it would be just judging on how they played the week before. I thought Georgia would go in there and rout them, but they didn't. And that was their own fault. But at the end of the day, by the end of that game, I was glad that they had one of those games where they had to gut one out. Because you can have those and end up on the other side of those, and then you got a blemish on your record. But I'm glad they were able to get one of those games like that versus, Power 5 talent, and still come out a winner and still have some stuff to work on. Like blowing a team out, not having being challenged going into a bye week, maybe that could have a negative effect. You know what I mean? Where's that hunger? Like when you disappointed some people. We've all disappointed people in our life at some point, and
yeah,
and you want to make it right. You know what I mean? You want to
No, for
make it right.
sure.
So they had something to work on, and they also they're trying to make last year right because I'm pretty sure everyone feels like they were the best team in football last year. I definitely believe that. I thought they were the best team in football, and they blew it. You know what I
They
mean?
did.
It's time.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
they don't have to wait till December to fix that. You know what I mean? That's a great opportunity, to fix this early. And so, um, I like that they had some adversity early on.
For sure. And I think, the thing that I really liked for Georgia in that game, aside from the adversity and all that, and I know that was one of the worst rush defense performances we've seen, at least statistically, from Georgia in a long time. It's certainly one of the worst missed tackle games we've seen from Georgia in a long time. They let me see, I got the number right here. They missed 13 tackles in run play defense in that game.
Mm,
Yeah, I mean,
very
it's
uncharacteristic.
very uncharacteristic, and I think despite all of that, I still found myself sitting there watching that defensive line and the amount of havoc that they were creating on passing downs,
Mm,
and just being like, I've not seen Georgia have this many dudes that can rush the passer, and particularly interior defensive linemen like Ingram Dawkins that are rushing the passer. And I mean, really since
mhm,
21. And I'm not comparing this group to 21, but like you start going down the list of guys that are creating pressure, and it is very impressive. It is, it
mhm,
is varied. You've got Jalen Walker, you've got Ingram Dawkins. I mean, Jalen Walker led the entire FBS in numbers of pressures created in week 3. Ingram Dawkins had 5 from the defensive tackle position. You got this Gabe Harris kid
mhm,
who kind of flashed, and then they sort of put him back on the shelf. But 3 pressures, a sack, a forced fumble. Like you've got these linebackers that we've talked about a lot. And then you
very
still have
fast.
Damon Wilson, Christian Miller, and you've got McLeod kind of coming into the mix. Like there's a lot of dudes on this team that can create havoc. And I think, last year's Georgia team sort of hit a point for a while where it was kind of like if 13 is not getting to the quarterback, then they're not getting to the quarterback. And I think
Mhm,
right now they're in a spot where it does feel more like 2021. And you could have pressure come from the interior, you could have it from the inside backers, you could have it off the edge, you could bring your inside backers to the edge, and really that's all just off of kind of fairly garden variety stuff, right? I mean, we're not seeing a bunch of like exotic stunts or anything like that inside. So uh it makes me feel kind of like, all right, if Georgia, you know, they can win a 13-12 game, which is what they just did. Like they can pick that offense up when there's problems.
mhm,
And they did hold Kentucky to 12 points, and they did keep Kentucky out of the red zone, and they did hold Kentucky to, I believe, 1.2 yards per play on 27 plays inside Georgia territory while missing 13 tackles on run plays. Right? Like, I
right.
mean that's kind of wild to think about. And overall,
Mhm,
it's just one of those things where I look at it and I say, all right, like about everything could go wrong that you would want to, keep from going wrong in this game. And they got out alive. What does it look like if they start playing well? What does it look like if they tackle like we expect a
mhm.
Kirby Smart football team to tackle? And I mean, I think Georgia fans and a lot of people are hopeful that we'll find that out on Saturday.
Yeah, yeah. I think they're gonna be up for it. I think they're gonna play their best game. They've had time to do it. It's been the bye weeks they've been good to us recently, a- and and you know they've taken advantage of them. You know what I mean? Like I say, week in and week out, I trust this staff. And so I think, in getting some guys back in the mix, you know what I mean? That's never a bad thing. So I'm looking forward to see what this break has done for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so let's kind of start looking forward a little bit here because I think that's what everyone's here for, right? Georgia, Alabama.
Right.
It's a regular season game in the 12-team playoff era, which kind of means on a certain level that it's not going to determine anyone's season, right? Like it's not going to determine whether you make the postseason or not. But at the same time, this game feels a little bit bigger than just a regular September game. I feel like it's fair to say Georgia got the one over Bama to win that 2021 title. They got over that hump, but the way last year ended left a bad taste in Georgia's players' mouths and in the mouths of Georgia fans. Like nobody liked how that game went down. And then you kind of look at the totality and it's like Kirby Smart is, 1-5 against Alabama in his tenure here. Now, I've been saying this on radio appearances all week. Having a Nick Saban problem is endlessly forgivable, right? Like who in college football did not have a Nick Saban problem? But
everybody.
You don't want to have an Alabama problem. And to me, having an Alabama problem and having a Nick Saban problem are two different things.
Yes.
You played, this way better than I do. I'm sure there was a team somewhere in your career, whether in college or the NFL, that was kind of like your bugaboo. Like mentally, do you?
When I was in school?
Yeah, y'all had a Florida problem. You did.
We had a Florida problem, and it was frustrating, and it wasn't a coach problem because we played against Spurrier, we played against Zook, like we had a Florida problem. They had some talented teams, of course. They put the smackdown on a lot of people. A lot of NFL players came through Florida during my time.
Yeah, dude.
Oh
yeah.
And we're talking about some beasts. But at the same time, the last game we lost to them was definitely a year where we should have beaten them. That was our only loss.
I was there.
That was my senior year. And I don't, I still don't know how we lost that game. We're by far the better team, and we end up losing. We just had a Florida problem, and you don't want those problems. So I was so happy when the tide started to turn after I left, and it's been it's been pretty lopsided. You know what I mean? And so which was lopsided the other way for a long time, even before my year, before my time at Georgia. They beat them. They beat them the year before I got there, but before then, a lot of losses too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Spurrier had the Dogs in the chokehold. So yeah, you don't want a Bama problem. Now, you don't play Bama every year unless it ends up being like that in a postseason deal. But you definitely it's almost, being that both teams have been so good as of late, it's almost like you play them every year. So it's become sort of a rivalry. You know what I mean? And so
yeah, for sure. No, it is certainly a rivalry. I mean, I think if you gave Georgia people the choice of what's one game on your schedule this year that you do not want to lose, I think it's this one.
Oh yeah, no question, without a doubt. And the Bama faithful they are tuned up. I tell you that much. They believe even without Saban, they believe that because they still have some of the same team. They still have the same quarterback that beat us last year. They're high off their new toy at receiver, the 17-year-old phenom that we hear about every week. We know
Yep.
he said, "I can't wait till he turns 18, so we can stop hearing about how 17 he is." Um, but we they're hyped. They're hyped up for him. They believe in DeBoer. You know, they like the wide open offense. They like that he's aggressive. They like that he likes to take shots, and they think that's going to be a problem for us. So, I can't wait.
Well, and I think, the curious side of all this for me is what's reality and what's perception, right? Like
Yeah,
I've carved out a lot of my, media career on sort of trying to dive into common narratives and determine whether or not they're factual. And I think the narrative coming into this game is that Georgia is lost and rudderless on offense. They're just maybe not that good as they have been the 3 years prior without Brock Bowers and Lad McConkey. The defense looked shaky against the run at times at Kentucky. And, Alabama has this second coming of Saban that they've already stumbled upon, and he's, right in the right lane, and they're just going to kind of roll along, and things are going really well so far. And they went to Wisconsin and they win that game 42-10, and it feels like everyone kind of forgot about that week 2 game they played against South Florida where they looked very suspect for 3 quarters. I mean, that game was 14-13, like
in the
midway
fourth
through the
quarter.
third quarter. Yeah. So I guess my question for you is: Have you watched Alabama? What do you think of them? Do you have any overarching impressions? I have some tape for us to look at here, but what have you seen so far?
What I think about Alabama is so far they've had better athletes than the teams they've played,
Mhm.
and they eventually broke those teams. But at the same time, I don't see the typical freaks that Bama usually has. Nobody's
Okay.
standing out where it's like, man, how are we going to contain this guy? Or how are we going to stop this guy? You know, and I'm pretty sure they can say the same thing about us. We don't have a Brock Bowers that they have to account for. You know what I mean? Lad
Yeah.
McConkey couldn't be covered. Nobody single covered him. We've, it's yet to be seen if we have somebody that can, at least give some of that type of production. Um, but at the same time, I don't see, for me, especially on the defensive side of ball for Alabama, I don't see, I don't see the game changers over there.
Okay.
I think they can be vulnerable at every position. Um, uh, there's no Caleb Downs back there.
No, there's definitely not a Caleb
No
Downs.
Terran, no
Yeah.
Terrian Arnold's, no Kool-Aid McKinstry, like no Dallas. No, what's my guy? Was it Dallas?
Dallas Turner,
No Dallas Turner.
Will
That
Anderson.
kid.
Yeah.
He had juice. Like Dallas Turner had some juice. He was a factor in the last matchup that we had against them.
No,
Um,
absolutely.
and
Finley again
I
with the time to throw, and that time.
I
True
tried
freshman that we
to
referenced a second ago. Man-to-man coverage.
look at
And
that.
fighting down the sideline.
Hold on, sorry. I had that volume on by mistake. All right. Sorry, you
Yeah,
were talking about their defense, so I figured I'd throw some
yeah.
more
So
defense.
I feel like you know I feel like we can get some good plays on their defense pretty consistently. You know,
Yeah,
I know the score didn't show it versus
that's the thing.
Wisconsin, but like there was some big runs. There was some chunk plays in the passing game, and I
I
know
mean,
I know we have better players than Wisconsin at every
yeah, well,
position.
I mean, one of the things that really stands out to me is and you brought it up with Turner and Anderson and those guys, is the edge play seems very different than in years past. I mean, you know, I mean, that's a that's a pretty large hole there for Bama standards, and you know, you got this is a not an edge player, but here off this backside, I mean, like you've got people moving linemen off Bama's front in a way that we haven't really seen in a while. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Right.
there's a lot of, and this is, I mean, we got a puller here, um, and so they're getting gapped up a little bit, but it's just they don't move quite the same up front, or at least you know, there's not five, six, seven guys in the front seven that are moving differently than it feels like everyone else in college football moves for the most part. Like we kind of got accustomed to seeing with Bama. You know, I mean, like you're right. I mean, Wisconsin, I think put what 170 rushing yards on them. Here, you've got South Florida, and you know, at this mesh point, they're going to kind of freeze Rusaw, the edge at the top of the formation there, and like when he hands it off, he doesn't crash in time to stop this from happening, which is not really typical of what we saw from Bama in the past, right? Like that's a play that it
Right.
feels like a lot of Bama edges make in the past. But yeah, I think what's hard, man, honestly, is that with all of that said, metrically, statistically, there's nothing I can really point to. And you know, say, oh, well, that's you know, they're giving up X number of what I mean, they've allowed 3 passes this year that have been over 15 yards. Like, but I
Yeah.
watch them play, and it feels like there are guys getting set free all over. I mean, like right here, their corners just have not really been tested, and that's not to say that they're bad, but I can't tell you that they're good yet, right? Is that fair to say in your mind? Like,
Yeah, that's fair.
yeah, I mean, like right here, you see this ball come over the middle, but I mean, like look at your guy up here at the top of the screen is just kind of chilling, open on a little curl at the sticks. Like, you know, there's a lot of stuff that you look around the field and you're like, is that a play that might be there right here? Watch this. I mean, that's you know, that's 6.
Mhm.
If you got a competent quarterback and some pass protection, that is 6. Now,
Yeah.
I think they took this kid out of the lineup, number 9 in Blockway, because of plays like that. And that's that's the other hard thing about breaking this game down is Bama keeps switching dudes out in the secondary, which I would say if you're switching guys out in the secondary over and over, probably not a great sign.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't have what you don't have enough back there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're still trying to figure it out. You know, when you have dudes, they're out there. You know, the dudes don't typically come off the field. You know what I mean? So they're still searching. Hopefully we
Yeah.
can, take advantage of that.
Well,
You
and
know
I
what I mean?
think the thing that is interesting for Georgia, right, is I've said a couple times this offseason, like the hardest part about Kirby Smart's job is that it feels like a lot of times that a football team gets better after a loss.
Hmm.
Often when you see the most improvement is after a team gets quote unquote exposed, whether that's schematically or from a personnel standpoint, and then they get a chance to go fix it. And the hardest part of Kirby Smart's job You there?
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Sorry, I think the weather just got really bad here for a second. It was like pouring down, so hopefully we're back now. But yeah, I think the hardest part of Kirby Smart's job is trying to get that motivation and improvement out of his team week to week while winning 42 games in a row. And I think maybe the blessing of that Kentucky game is that it probably felt like a loss by Georgia standards. It did feel like a loss by Georgia standards. And I certainly think he has his team's attention. You know, I was at his presser on Monday and Tuesday, and last night somebody asked, you know, how was practice? And he was like, practice isn't a problem on a week like this. Like, we have their attention. If anything, it's our job to make sure they don't leave too much energy on the practice field and save some of that for the game. But yeah, I guess my question for you is Alabama kind of waiting to be exposed, but hasn't played somebody capable of it yet?
I don't know if they're waiting to be exposed. I think they, like we pointed out before, there's some positions where they're not as talented as they've been in the past. So that could lead to some exposure. But I think they are coached well. I think I have, you know, a friend of mine that, you know, that coaches high school ball. So he has relationships with a lot of these college coaches, and he thinks Bama has a good staff. You know what I mean? So they'll be ready. You know, so I don't know about the exposed part, but maybe they're waiting. Maybe they're waiting to. I think they're waiting to see what they really have, though. They haven't played a team. They haven't played anybody that has the same type of, you know, artillery as they have.
Yeah, you know and I mean? when I say exposed, I don't mean exposed to be incompetent or anything like that. But I think it's hard for me not to turn on some of this tape and see some of these corners and stuff like that. And it's, I mean, they're letting guys run free in the back end at times. They haven't played a quarterback who sees the field well enough or delivers the ball well enough to really take advantage of that. One thing that really kind of popped out to me this week is Kane Womack, their defensive coordinator, who is, I believe, a good coach, to your point, mentioned that they have played over 100 snaps in man coverage over the last 2 games, and that his boundary cornerbacks have only allowed 2 catches for 24 yards while, you know, in man coverage, which I'm trying to understand, is it because they're great or is it because of the competition they faced, right? And I guess the other question is, why are they playing that much man? Because that seems like a lot of man coverage. If you're talking 100 snaps in man over 2 games, I mean, that's almost every passing snap they're facing. And I look at some of these plays of them in zone right here. I mean, you know, you're seeing, I think, them struggle to pass off receivers at times, and I kind of wonder if that's why they've decided to go a little bit more man heavy.
That could be a reason. You know, zone requires a lot of discipline and very consistent play, or you risk giving up huge plays.
Right.
You know what I mean? Man requires, quite frankly, the athletes. You know, you gotta have the personnel to be able to play man. And you gotta have the rush defense, the pass rush, to be able to play man too, because nobody can play man forever in the secondary. You know, you got to get the quarterback, you know, down or rushed. So maybe you know, I don't know the classes of their cornerbacks, but they could be young or definitely inexperienced, because they lost several NFL guys from their secondary. So at the very least, they're guys that are new to starting and probably young altogether. That send them out there like, hey, you got him.
No,
That's
and
probably a good reason.
they definitely are young. I mean, it seems like, I think it's telling that they essentially, swapped out their boundary corner on the left side of the defense without, without facing any sort of catastrophe or anything like that, right? Like, you see here this little freeze frame I've got. I mean, like, this is a big space that they've kind of have open here on the screen, and I go kind of through all of this, and it's like, I mean, I'm struggling to predict honestly exactly who will play. I mean, the Xavier Brown kid on the right side is number 2, and it seems like he's been the right boundary corner more often than not the last couple weeks. But I mean, like, Wisconsin, I thought was effective at time. I mean, like, they lost their starting quarterback on the first series of the game, so they were
Saw
very
that.
hamstrung. But I did think they were effective at times, kind of showing that you could use some pre-snap motion and some different eye candy to maybe freeze some guys from Bama. They didn't pass protect all that well throughout that game, but I mean, here you've got a pretty open receiver, and you just have a quarterback that can't deliver an accurate ball. So I don't know that the numbers. And I hate saying this because I am very much, a fan of the numbers, but I don't know that the numbers really tell us much of anything here, at least about Bama's pass defense.
Sometimes, like, numbers are good, but you know, you have to watch you have to look at the numbers with some context sometimes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the like the like for instance, a quarterback can hit 70% of his passes and still not be accurate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you don't know that unless you've seen the tape.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's
You know what I mean? So it's the numbers still require some, you know, some looking at of the tape. You know what I mean? And so, the numbers are what they are, but the tape is also what it is.
no, for sure. And I think, you look at it, and it's hard not to think that there should be opportunities for Georgia in this game. Like, if Carson Beck is the the Heisman Trophy candidate, or the possible first quarterback taken in the 2025 draft, as I think we all came into this season thinking he could be, then this should be a game where Georgia comes out and attacks this secondary. I think that's what I would like to see from Georgia in this game, is that they come out and they play aggressively, and they test these guys downfield, and they kind of make them prove that they are comfortable in man coverage, as comfortable as their defensive coordinator thinks they are, because I just don't know that we really know yet.
Yeah, it could be a coming out party for some guys.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
mean,
we still haven't used Evans down the field yet.
mhm.
You know, we still haven't used Arian down the field much.
No,
You
I
know,
think the
um,
first few weeks of the season have all been about trying to establish Arian as an actual threat on intermediate routes, so that
mhm,
people will bite on double moves down the road.
yeah, yeah, man. I think we've been holding back in some areas, you know, for this game right here.
Yeah.
It's a very, very important game for a number of reasons. It's an SEC game. They probably won't look at it that way, but it's essentially it's a revenge game.
Right.
Uh, and it all counts in the end. So it's a very, very big game.
Well, let's spin this over.
I think maybe we haven't, showed a lot so far.
Yeah. No, I definitely think that. And I mean, I think that is it's probably the big question for me, right? Is I've had my theories of kind of how Georgia manages a season and using games against lesser opponents sometimes to prove a point to their personnel or to practice something they feel like they need to be better at or to toughen guys up or whatever you want to whatever scenario you want to pick. And so I'm very interested to see how this kind of all plays out. Let's look at some offensive snaps real quick because I do think I do think Jalen Milroe does present a unique challenge. Kirby Smart talked about that this week. Like, the first play I got here, we've got. What's interesting is they were without Caden Proctor for the first 2 games of the year. He hurt his arm before the opener, and he is the normal left tackle. And not having him out there really threw things out of whack, right? I mean, they moved they tried multiple different tackles in. I mean, this is I think this is the first drive of the season right here. This left tackle is going to get worked by a Western Kentucky defensive lineman. Yeah. Now they've got Caden Proctor back, and I think the vibes are much better. But I mean, I think that's honestly, we would be remiss to do the preview show and not say if Alabama has a tackle injury on Saturday night, and we don't wish that on anybody. We want everyone to be healthy, but if that were to occur, that could be a cataclysmic type of scenario for them. Because, I mean, bro, I watched the same right tackle get called for 4 holding penalties against South Florida and then get beat badly on multiple pass rush plays. I think the middle 3 of their offensive line has been pretty consistent. I'm not saying they're great, but I think they're pretty good, if not great. But the tackle spot is going to be the one to watch, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, I think our edge guys can be a handful for most tackles. You know what I mean? So, and I don't think Bama has those, those typical, high level first round guys that tackle right now. They can work them, maybe can work themselves into that, but like this, they don't have what they've had in the past.
Sure.
I don't know if they have that right now.
No, it doesn't feel like that. I mean, I think what's interesting to me is talking about Milroe. He's just a really fascinating player, and I think he's kind of a lightning rod for opinions in a lot of ways. But what it seems like, when you look at their offense and how it functions, it feels like his legs have kind of become the thing that they rely on a lot, especially as they get into the red zone. Like, it feels like when the field shrinks, his passing is not fantastic in the intermediate ranges. He's a great deep ball thrower, but when the field shrinks, you're going to see all these packages here, and it's just like his legs take over. And I mean, that to me is, you got QB power here, easy touchdown. You're going to come back right side against South Florida, similar concept, easy touchdown. I mean, they do this. I'm not positive if they have rushed for a touchdown inside the red zone that hasn't been from him at this point, unless it was right on the goal line. Like, I mean, he's good. I mean, like, you see these clips, I get why they want to put the ball in his hands. This play I thought was really interesting because it almost looks like they're going to run some sort of like split zone kind of concept with this guy coming in motion, and then he just keeps rolling, and Milroe keeps it off that fake, and it's a big chunk run. So, I guess my question for you is, from a Georgia standpoint, how do you manage that without kind of over managing it and getting into a situation where you're kind of allowing run lanes to open up for the backs that don't need to be there?
Like we've heard this week, and then like we've heard from Coach Smart, Jalen Milroe, he presents a unique challenge. There's no way around it. You have an extra. You gain an extra blocker when your quarterback is running the ball.
Right.
So when, especially with somebody with his type of explosiveness, he could get loose quick. So he requires you to be very, very disciplined. And you got to tackle. He's like tackling a running back. You got to tackle him, and like you got to put them. You want to put them in. You want to get them off schedule. You want to put them in bad downs. You want to get them off schedule, so you're forcing him to do what he isn't. He isn't a prolific pocket passer. Like you say, he has great deep ball, but the intermediate stuff is, he's not going to dissect the defense, and it's not a knock on him. He don't have to. You know what I mean?
No, for sure. And I mean, I think he's gotten better at keeping his eyes downfield when he starts to scramble. Like this is what makes him really dangerous right here, in my opinion. Is he's gonna peek up and there's 6, right?
That's
so
it.
I think that is from a Georgia standpoint, it's like I almost feel like you want to make Alabama drive the field, right? Like this offense seems very dependent on big plays, and if you're Georgia, I think you'd rather give up 8 to 12 and live to fight another down and live to kind of force them beat you in the red zone than try to create some tackle for loss on him and end up letting a wide receiver scoot free out the back door and burn you for a 60-yard touchdown. That seems like maybe the entire ball game, because I'm not positive that Bama can really consistently win against Georgia if they have to go and get a few yards at a time in red zone situations and try to score down around the goal line that way. All right, I think we might have lost George for a second here, but do have some more plays here of Milroe. This is kind of what we were talking about with the short to intermediate passing game, right? Is you see sort of some misses. This is not a difficult throw, and you're still going to see him kind of miss that. That's a pretty normal throw for a college quarterback. This is not an easy throw by any means, but just to show, as good as his D-ball has been, he has not been perfect. But they do like to run these corner routes a lot. They ran one for a touchdown right before half against Wisconsin. I think when he gets to feeling himself a little bit, though, you can see him kind of make some dangerous plays. You got him throwing it back against his body here. George, are you there? Oh, here we go. Yeah, sorry, we lost you for a second there. Looks like you're back now. But that's one for each of us tonight on the internet glitches. So we're even, my friend. But yeah, I was just kind of showing a little more Milroe here, and then I wanted to get into their more traditional run game. I think Jam Miller is a very good back. I like his running style. I think he runs hard, gets north south quickly. But yeah, it's it seems like they've really kind of split their zone and gap stuff pretty evenly this year. But inside zone has really started kind of picking up for them lately. They were only running a 48.9% success rate for inside zone for the entire year, which is not great considering their competition. And that is with a 58% success rate and 6.2 yards per carry on 14 inside zone attempts versus Wisconsin. So point being in all of that is that it seems like that side of the run game really got clicking for them last week and has kind of started to buoy up some of their other numbers. But Wisconsin ain't Georgia. I might argue the South Florida defense they faced was, at least up front, maybe had better athletes in some positions than the one Wisconsin fielded. I know that Wisconsin's a bigger name, but those Florida boys are a little bit different. When you talk about the big fellas. So what have you seen from them in the run game? I mean, like, this is just right here. I mean, they're just gashing guys. I mean, like, we don't really see Georgia give up stuff like this off the backside of a play, do we?
Nah. That right there is all about discipline. Discipline, ring your keys, playing fast, everything that Georgia is about. You mentioned inside zone. The last game, I noticed they did run it up the gut, at a nice rate, and they got the backs to do it. Justice Haynes is a tough back. He's good. He's a good inside runner. Like you said, Jam is a good back. They were a good team, and the thing about having a quarterback like Milroe is he's gonna keep your edges honest. So when you have a quarterback that can take off backside, it holds that in. So you can't crash as often. You got to wait until you see it, and then you got to go. You know what I mean? So it's going to take some discipline to corral the run game. But we got the athletes to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, from a Georgia perspective, what becomes kind of fascinating is with Bama's passing game being so dependent on this kind of deep ball. I mean, like, it's just, you look at what they've done here so far this year. I mean, Milroe has thrown for, I think, 392 yards now off of those deep shots, and I mean, like, that's most of his yardage, right? Like, I mean, that is most of what they do, and I don't know how sustainable that is against Georgia. I mean, you can knock some of the things that happened defensively for Georgia against Kentucky, but you can't really knock them for the way the secondary played in that game. I mean, the secondary was lights out, and I'm not so sure that Kentucky doesn't have better athletes at receiver from 1 to 6, maybe than even what Alabama has at this point. So I'm curious. Milroe is 7 of 14 for 300 yards, 302 yards, and 5 touchdowns on 20-plus yard throws that so far this year. And talking about those medium throws, it's like he's not even really attempting them. He's only thrown 7 balls on 10 to 19-yard passes. So it's like he's either going deep or he's dumping it short. He's 24 of 30 or 24 of 27 throwing behind the line of scrimmage or within 9 yards, right? It's like that's all stuff that they're relying on yards after the catch. And Georgia, look, if they tackle the way that we're used to seeing Georgia tackle, they won't give up too much after the catch. That's just not really what they do. So it feels like this game on a lot of levels comes down to Alabama needs to probably hit 2 to 3 explosive pass plays, at least in a half, or like 1 to 2 really explosive pass plays where we're talking 50-plus yard kind of touchdown.
You went out. You kind of couldn't hear you in the end.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying, Bama, it feels like in this game, it sort of comes down to like, I don't see Georgia tackling so poorly that they're not, that Bama's just going to be able to dump balls off and throw screens and live like that. Like, they're either going to have to hit 2 to 3 explosive pass plays, maybe a half, depending on how this thing scripts out, or they're going to lose. Like, it feels like they've got to hit some big passing shots to win this game, just because they don't take the 20-yard chunks.
Yeah, definitely. My biggest concern is things breaking down, and number 4, beating us with his legs. You want to limit that as much as you can. I don't see them, bombing us to death. You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure they want some of that, but I just don't see it. We got, some serious safeties back there. I like our corners too. It's just it's gonna be hard to just bomb on us like that. But when things break down, it makes it easier to move the ball versus anyone. You know what I mean? You can't cover forever. And so it's just they have to be disciplined in this game. And again, I'll repeat it. Now granted, they have the same wait, hold on. Did they who did they play? Bama played last week, right?
No, they had a bye.
They had a bye too. So yeah, being that they had to buy 2, but I really think us having the bye, it helps us get ready for Milroe.
Yeah, I agree.
Having 2 weeks for that is big.
No, and I think Georgia has spent a lot of the last 2 weeks, kind of not putting in anything new, but like really honing in on at least this week, like these things that you're talking about of being disciplined with a mobile quarterback and really knowing your scramble rules as a defense on the back end, because I don't think Alabama, what I wanted to talk about here before we get done with the film is Ryan Williams is the guy that everyone's excited about as a receiver, but you see some plays where he makes, this right here, he's coming out of the slot and he is just going to beat this Wisconsin slot defender for a touchdown against cover 2, and it's a really nice throw and it's a really nice route and all of that. And I think that's a danger spot for Georgia. Williams has only played about 9% of his snaps lined up in the slot, but when he's there, Georgia's got to be really careful about not letting him get loose. But you start going and looking at some of these other, a lot of his plays, because he's got more than double the yardage of anybody else on their offense from a receiving standpoint. And a lot of his plays, George, like they're just busted coverages. I mean, like here you got a 2nd and 7 where they want to get to him. And I mean, the USF corner is in his hip pocket. Now, I'm not saying that, that happens every down, but it's like, I think sometimes there becomes so much talk about a player that people are like, oh, well, this guy's the second coming of Julio Jones. I heard him compared to Julio Jones this week. You can't compare anybody to Julio Jones.
You can't compare NFL cast to Julio Jones.
No, dude. Julio is like one of the freakiest athletes I've ever seen in my life.
Ever.
Yeah. And so, you look at Williams, and what's interesting, I mean, like right here, this is one of his big chunk plays last week. It's just a bust.
It's just wild.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of his, there's a play, I think, against Western Kentucky that's a bust for a touchdown for him. Like a lot of his receptions are just coverage busts, and that's, look, credit him for taking advantage of it and all that good stuff. But that's not something that Georgia does. This is not replicable for Georgia. And I think you start going down the line of their receivers after Williams, and you have a curious situation there. You've got Bernard, who is a good receiver. And I think good is the right way to describe him. I think he, will take things if you leave them open for him. But like, I don't think he's a real difference maker on the level of some of the guys we've seen from Bama in the past. But what's telling to me is that you see here in this Wisconsin game, there's a couple plays in a row where they've got 3rd down, and they are, I mean, right here, they've got Justice Haynes lined up in the slot. Or I'm sorry, right here, he comes out of the backfield. And the next play I'm going to show you, he's going to come out of the slot on 3rd and 9, and he's going to be kind of the main target here. And that isn't normal for Bama. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, that Justice has the ability to go and run pass routes. That's great. But, 3rd and 9 in a 7-3 game in the second quarter is not normally where you see a running back go out to the slot and catch a pass, right? Like, that says to me that they don't maybe think they've got quite as many difference makers in their receiver core as they did at times in the
past. I agree.
All right.
I don't see any other reason that it could be.
Yeah. Last thing I wanted to highlight is Bama has had some ball security issues so far this year. Here you're going to have a fumbled snap down on the goal line against South Florida, but on the whole, they have, what do I got? I got the number somewhere in here. 6 fumbles through 3 games. They've only lost 4, but that is a lot of fumbles, I feel like. So that's what I got. Yeah, that's what I got for you. I don't know if there's much else left to say at this point, but how do you see this thing playing out on Saturday, and where do you think, Georgia's mindset is in this one?
I think Georgia's gonna be locked in, man. I think for a change, I think the change of scenery is good. You know what I mean? Lately, we've played them, essentially in the dome, or at home, so to speak. We've that away. It's almost like you can lock in more getting away from the noise of home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I expect them to be locked in. I expect them to play. I'm expecting, you know what I'm expecting? I'm expecting a big rushing game. I don't, I feel like, I feel like a minimum of about $1.50. You know, and if we can get that, that mean to me, I think that means we're doing pretty good. You know what I mean? So I like I like our chances. I feel like we're definitely not the underdog. So when I say I like our chances, that means I like us to do what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So uh I don't know if are we doing predictions or because
Hit it. Yeah.
I, yeah. Um I like this to be I say I want to say 28 or do I want to do 31? I say 28. To I say 28 to 20 Georgia.
So I look at this game and I could not love this spot more than I do for Georgia, right? You got a team that cost you a three-peat last year or a chance to go play for a three-peat. You have Jalen Milroe going on the radio after last year's SEC championship game and saying, we could see it in their eyes that they didn't want anymore and that they quit. Talking all that shit, right? Like, I don't know how you could have Georgia more fired up, and then you add this Kentucky conundrum into the whole deal, and like it really feels like a perfect storm to where I think Kirby Smart will fully have their attention. I also love this spot for Kirby Smart because I think, look, Kirby Smart has done a tremendous job at the University of Georgia. He has architected and built this kind of powerhouse program that's won 42 straight regular season games, but it always felt like they almost overcoached against Alabama at certain times in the past, and they almost kind of changed things that were working because these staffs knew each other so well that it was like they were trying to triple cross the double cross. You know what I mean? And
Right.
sometimes the double cross never came, and Alabama just kind of kept it simple, and that tended to be the best. So I think for Kirby, having Saban gone is a huge advantage. I think it opens up a whole world for them offensively and and defensively. Like I just expect them to just go play, and that's all they really need to do in this game. And I think sometimes in the past, the offensive game plan for Georgia against Bama got a little bit too conservative and too focused on kind of protecting the defense, and I'm not sure if that will happen this time around. So I like it for Georgia. I think it's a really nice spot for UGA, and I think they're ready, man. I mean, just the vibe being in the building yesterday was just an energy kind of coming off those guys where they don't seem over their skis or too eager, but they seem like they want to go play this game. And I think all of this entire situation that we were just talking about, I think it has freed Georgia up to go and hunt in a way that they maybe haven't since 2022, right? Like, just go out there and go play because you're the underdog and everyone's kind of, questioning you. I know Vegas doesn't have them as the underdog, but the public certainly doesn't really seem very high on Georgia, and I think that this game has kind of been built towards on some level by the staff. So I like it. I think they'll go out there. I think this game really kind of comes down to Georgia's receivers versus Bama's secondary, and it's going to be interesting. I think there's some unknowns there. I think this is the whole game feels, not the whole game, but a lot of this game feels like it's on 6 for me on Dominic Lovett. I think those slot corners can be picked on, and so I'm going to say Georgia 30. I'm going to say Georgia 34, Alabama 20. I think that they get it done, kind of not comfortably, but I think maybe a late touchdown or something creates that 2-score margin. I think it'll be a physical game and a hard-fought game, but I will say if Georgia's receivers, maybe go out and are better than I think or are deeper than I think, that there is very much a scenario to me where like this could be a lot of fun for Georgia fans on Saturday night, just because I do think there are a lot of plays to be had on that Bama secondary. And if, I think what you're going to get from Lovett. I think you'll get something from Young. Like, I think what you'll get from Dylan Bell on a certain level. But, like, if you get a big play from Arian or Anthony Evans or some of these guys that you were kind of talking about earlier, like, then they might be able to win rather comfortably. We'll see, though. We'll see. I mean, I thought they would win big in Atlanta last year, and was very wrong about that. Was very wrong about, I wasn't really sure how injured some of those guys were, and I think Mims kind of threw that off. But whatever happens for them, whatever the result is for them on Saturday, what I want to see from Georgia is for them to go out and play this game aggressively, not play this game, kind of cautiously, but go and attack, because this defense doesn't really deserve the same level of respect that we've kind of seen them give Bama defenses in the past.
Right. And it's funny you say that. You say you want to see them, just play. And I think the timing of this game lends itself to that. This is not it's not the same stakes as the last time they played.
Right.
That game cost us a playoff spot. It's in the game before, that the last time we played them, it cost us, it didn't cost us in the grand scheme, but it did cost us the SEC championship. Those are always nice, to get.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So yeah, not having like this game it's a huge game, but it doesn't, everything is still on the table, win or lose. So it might have them a little, might let them play a little looser. Take more chances.
Yeah, you sort of saw Texas do that last year when they went to Tuscaloosa and aired it out. Like, I think that's the question for me, because we've seen Georgia win plenty of games with, kind of living off the seams and some of those intermediate throws from Carson Beck. But, like, what if this was the night where he sort of really put it all together with the deep ball, right? Like, I don't think that's totally out of the question. I think that there are plays to be had on the secondary. I think that, the big thing, though, is can they get that run game going enough to where they can really work play action? Because so far this year, off play action, they've been superb, right? It'll be interesting to see what they got run scheme wise, because I think there's probably some tricks up the sleeve still.
Yep.
All right, man. Well, that's what we got for y'all on this Wednesday night. George and I will both be at the game on Saturday. So if you
Yep.
into us, say hello.
If you see me, holler at me. Holler at a player when you see me in the street.
Oh man,
holler at me. I'm there. And Bama fans, Dog fans, roll Tide. Don't roll Tide. I won't be rolling Tide. You know what I mean? I'll be floating around. Somebody hook me up. Somebody give me a hot dog or something, man. Be hospitable.
Invite us to your tailgates, please.
Yeah, holler at me. You know what I mean? I'll be around there. Big Grandma be down there. Be hospitable toward us. We're a bunch of nice fellas.
Try to be. Y'all be kind when you see us. Until then, y'all be safe, especially if you're in the path of the storm.
Peace.